Welcome back to the Candy Colored Studio. I'm artist Katrina Berg. This is episode 194. We're going to talk about my first big floral in my latest series heading to my solo show. We're also going to talk about an artist tip all about Tamara Laporte and her life book, and also a red pill about our vote and if it's safe. Okay. So many exciting things, so many things going on. I hope you're doing well. So I just want you to know that I am going to share some visual things in this episode. So if you're just listening in podcast land to the audio and you want to, after you listen, you want to go back and just see the little portions that are visual, you can go on my website, katrinaberg.com, and click on podcast. And you can always check on my YouTube. And then also Spotify, you can actually watch the videos in there as well. So keep an eye out for those. But so I wanted to give you a little studio update. So I don't know if you noticed in my last episode, I had my big floral piece here in the background, and I didn't do a very good job of talking about it or showing it to you. So I'm going to do that right now. So I'm going to go stand by it so you can see how big it is. And then my good friend Todd Orchard is making a beautiful frame for it. So I'll hold up a frame that's kind of the inspiration for the frame for this piece. And so that's going to be, I can't wait to get that as well. So this piece is a 48-inch floral, 48-inch circle. And it's pretty big. By the time we get the frame on, it's usually just a little bit shorter than I am, which although I know that's not saying much, but this is the smallest piece that will be in my show next spring. And we're just getting started, but I'm going to kind of take you along the whole journey and show you, and you'll get to kind of see how all these ideas just kind of come to fruition. I've got a whole plan mapped out. I love having a plan, but I don't always stick to the plan. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll tell you about it the whole way. So it'll be a lot of fun. But this particular piece has a chinoiserie vase. And as you know, I love basically just Asian tradition culture. My dad served a church mission in Taiwan. And so we've always had a lot of the Asian culture just infused in our home growing up. And most of my friends actually were either, all Asian or part Asian, like all my high school friends. And so it's just something that has been a very just comfortable part of my life. And so coming to Utah, it's been a little bit different, but being able to use these definitely makes a difference for us. So I feel like I always want to add that in there. And then you've probably noticed that I like to have creatures kind of hiding in some of these pieces to just remind us of our loved ones that are always watching out for us. They could be, obviously alive. They could be passed on. Just making sure the microphone's still working. But I also, in this latest series, you're going to see a lot of these creatures are going to be taking more of a focal and be more in the forefront of the piece, taking a big stage moment, I guess, in the piece. So I'll go stand back there and you can kind of look at it. If I talk back there, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to hear me, but we'll see how it goes. So, all right, so here it is. As you can see, I think it's taller than me on the easel, which is great. And then I'll show you. Here is the frame that we want to kind of like model. This style is going to go on it. And anyways, I think it's going to be amazing. A lot of gold, but also fairly light. So that's what we have going on. Let's see. One of the things that I love about working with Todd Orchard is that because he's an artist, he's always up for an adventure and trying new things, and he does such a good job. His craftsmanship is amazing. But that's what's going on. Other things. Oh, I was going to show you some details. I'll show you some details of the piece since it's kind of far away. So let me see if I can share the screen. So I'm just going to pull you right into my folder with the details. Okay, so here's a photo that I took when I was standing over the painting when I was just kind of finishing it and then letting it dry. you can get a good idea. I've got some starling birds in the forefront, and I love the starlings that sweep around in our neighborhood. And then we've got some fairy wren, also some hummingbirds, cockatoo. I think they're cockatoo. I can't remember if they're cockatoo. Yeah, I think they're. Well, anyways, they're tropical birds. And then we've got some protea, some daffodil, sunflowers, and cherry blossoms, which I always think about at this time of year. I love cherry blossoms. And there's a lot of really great symbols with all these flowers as well. And then let me see what other pictures that I was going to show you. Some details. So here's a really good detail of just like the chinoiserie vase. There's a couple more birds on the vase. So I think all in all, there's, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think we counted 13. I think my big twin counted 13 birds in this piece. Oh, and then we also have these cute little berries. I love the berries that you'll often find with in protea arrangements. So there's that. Let's see what else we have. Some sideways pictures. There we go. There's some more details of the berries and the protea flowers, and of course the daffodils, which have been really fun to paint. And then we've got these cute little fairy wren hanging out together. And of course, close-ups of the cherry blossoms, which also is a great, like I think about DC, but I also think about Asia because obviously they, especially in Japan, they've got their own little cherry blossom festival. And that's really awesome. Okay, so that's a little close-up of the sunflower. Sorry, I didn't realize so many of these were upside down, but I'm fixing them as I go. And then this is just to show you the shine and, just the texture that's happening. I don't know what the best way is to look at it. Probably the original. So lots of shine. In fact, I think I'll go ahead and varnish it this week. So that'll be exciting. There's another great photo with the shine and the texture. We did use a lot of paint on this piece. In fact, I think I'm going to order some more paint just because I like to have a big stack at all times. And then here's the painting on the easel. I have a couple easels. This is the one that I painted it on. Mark did this gorgeous easel, and he does such a good job. Okay, so there's that. And then there's a close-up of the starling. Anyways, that's the basics. And then I also wanted to show you for sure that piece that I sent to Beljar, or that they took it. So it has sold, but I wanted to let you know that they did ask me to paint some more of that size, similar shape and size. So we'll be doing some more circles. That's another thing Todd's working on for me. He's working on more of this size with the gorgeous frames. In fact, let me get to the detail of the frame. Sorry, maybe I have to close out of this. That might be better. Okay. So here is a detail of Todd's frame. And again, he has been just exploring the gold leaf, but with plaster and texture. And obviously he's really good at naturally antiquing things and just letting them look as authentic and natural as possible. He just does a beautiful, beautiful job. So I'm excited to work on some more within that series. You can kind of see some of the texture, again, details of the florals, the birds, and of course the frame. So, and there's some other things. Okay, let's stop sharing for a second. Okay, cool. So that's kind of the studio update of things that are going on. And I mentioned last week that I'm kind of trying to transition into the summer. And so again, I will keep you updated, but I know we're all going to be transitioning. It's going to be a wild ride of a summer. Okay, so let's jump into our artist tip of the week. So I was listening to this awesome episode on the Left Brain Artist, and that's with Suzanne Redmond, my sweet friend in Florida. And she was interviewing Tamara Laporte. I don't know if it's Tamara or Tamara. I like both of those pronunciations, but it's episode 257. And Tamara, she is a mixed media artist, but she also, like, she's had hard things in her life and she's not afraid to talk about it. And she's just such a beautiful, humble soul. And she started doing something called the Life Book. And in this book, it's like a year-long art course, and it includes some of the most, I'm just reading to you some of the stuff because I think that Suzanne does a better job of explaining it. But she said it includes some of the most celebrated mixed media and personal development teachers out there. So this is obviously not just Tamara and her stuff, but she's collected really great things from lots of different teachers. And then when it started, there's been since it started, there's been 21,000 people who have participated in the Life Book. And so each year is a different one. And so obviously the 2022 Life Book, it features a year of courses from 31 different instructors. And so really, really cool stuff. But I loved hearing all about Tamara and her experience as an artist and even what she did before. It was a really great episode. So I totally encourage you to go check it out and see if that would be something that will help you transition through summer, get some new inspirations and new ideas in your practice. And I think it will be a lot of fun. And then also definitely encourage healing. I felt like she did such a great job in the episode, just talking about her own mental wellness journey and just having some really great suggestions for all of us who are, just going through life, this human experience, ups and downs and everything in between. Okay, let's get into our red pill. So I'm curious, do you vote? And if you do vote, do you vote in all the elections? Do you just do certain elections like presidential or local? How do you decide, right? I know a lot of people don't vote, and maybe for lots of different reasons. I think sometimes people think that there's no point in voting because their vote doesn't really count. They're just one person. And I understand this. I've had some of these same thoughts, right? And there's other people that might feel like they don't understand the policies or even the people that they're trying to decide. They just don't know enough about them to feel like they can do a good job or feel good about their vote and their choice. And I understand that. I've definitely felt that as well. Some people might think it's completely rigged and there's no reason to vote. And again, also understandable. And I admit that I've had those same thoughts and feelings. My personal interest in voting has definitely increased over time. And there was a point where I just came to realize that I could either sit here and complain about the people or the policies that I didn't agree with, or I could just learn about the people and the topics and do the best that I could to vote and take more responsibility for what's happening around me. And I'm not saying that it's had a great result or anything, but I feel like I have felt better the more time and effort that I've put into researching and trying to decide what's the best thing for our family, for myself, and who's going to represent that the best. So these are things that I've been thinking about, right? I kind of feel like the first time that I ever considered the fact or was just had a red pill that there might actually be voter fraud out there was when I heard about the hanging chads back in Florida. I think it was John Kerry and Bush Jr. Okay. And that was the first time I was like, oh my gosh, what if our vote doesn't really count? What if our vote isn't secure? Right. And maybe you've had some of those same thoughts when you first heard about the hanging chads. Then skipping to much later, more recently, I feel like I saw some videos over the last few years of people who were admitting that they were paid to vote for certain candidates or policies or whatever it was. And I thought, this is interesting. Again, wow, I didn't know this stuff happened, right? Clearly, I'm just hanging out in my studio doing my thing and I didn't even know. But it was interesting and it was also surprising to me. So I kept asking myself, okay, so if voter fraud is real, how long has it been happening? Who's involved? I had lots of questions. And so these were some of the rabbit holes that I started choosing to investigate, right? What I found really wasn't that surprising. Maybe you've found similar things, but I feel like I wasn't just seeing voter fraud in one particular I don't know, policy, platform, party. I wasn't seeing it in one place. In fact, it looks like there's information and evidence out there that voter fraud actually happens in multiple, if not all parties, in all sorts of places within our country, big cities, small little rural towns, and way beyond. So in other countries, it happens in other countries. And I've shared a little bit about these thoughts in a different episode. Maybe I'll have to link to it if you haven't heard it. But yeah, so I've had these, I've been thinking about these things for a while. So fast forward to last month. In May, well, I guess it's still May. We're at the very end of May. But at the beginning of the month, I watched the documentary 2000 Mules. And if you haven't seen it, I totally recommend that you go check it out for yourself so you can decide for yourself, right? Maybe you've heard about it. Maybe you've seen some articles that talk about it. But for me personally, you know me, I like to just get in there and see it and look at the information and decide for myself, listen to my heart, see with discernment what is really happening here and what I need to do with this information. So I watched them. I kind of got like I'd seen some previews and peeks and I was really excited about it. And so one night we actually sat down and watched it. Carl and I watched it. The twins sat down and watched for a while and it was fascinating. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the first question is, what is a mule? Okay. So how they describe a mule in the documentary is anybody that is they're taking votes and they're like putting them in drop boxes. Okay. So basically they're the mules. They're the ones taking these votes and putting them in the drop boxes. And they're not necessarily their vote. They're doing multiple. Okay. Okay. So crazy. So basically what they do in this documentary, they use this, there's this group and they're a nonpartisan investigative team called True the Vote. And I will link to them and you can totally check them out for yourself. But for many years, they realized there were some shenanigans going on and they wanted to see exactly what type of shenanigans, how deep it was, where it's coming from. Like they decided there was basically like a very organized network of things happening. And so they started to follow and investigate and like collect data in very specific places. Okay. So again, True the Vote. So basically what they did was they were able to request and obtain information from cell phones, like basically like your geo tracking. They were like following geo tracking of specific cell phones. So they would see that the same cell phone kept showing up at these drop boxes multiple times a day in multiple counties. And they started like kind of zeroing in on these particular mules, right? So we're not talking about Aunt Bessie next door who's just too old and she can't take her vote to the drop box and she asked you to drop it off. We're not talking about family members dropping off a bunch of votes for their family. We're talking about people going multiple times a day to multiple drop boxes in multiple counties. Okay. So those were the people they started watching because they wanted to kind of get the biggest offenders, if that's the best way to describe it, right? They kind of wanted to follow them and to find out like, what's the system? How's it working? So they were doing that. They also were using the surveillance from the Dropbox like cameras that were kind of surveilling the drop boxes. Okay. And obviously not all drop boxes have surveillance, but they were using that information as well. And then they narrowed it down even further and they were only watching mules in the swing states for the 2020 presidential election. So we're talking, they were looking at Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona. Anyways, I think there were like five or six that they were watching. Okay, so they're watching these and it was just seriously fascinating, okay? What was so interesting is there were a lot of mules, many mules. And so obviously the name of the documentary is 2000 Mules. So they were tracking 2000 of these mules in multiple states, but again, not all 50 states, maybe 5 or 6 of the 50, right? Okay, so they started following and recording all the data in these 2000 mules. And what just watching the data on their system was absolutely like watching one of my very favorite spy movies, but also a little bit alarming. Okay. So again, if you haven't seen it, I just can't recommend it enough. Just it's truly really fascinating, right? This is just one tiny area of our vote, right? There's so many other things, but if it's true, and there is this idea that our absentee ballots could be being trafficked, that's really, really fascinating. And there is plenty of stuff to look at in this documentary for you to decide what you think. Okay. So again, I totally recommend you check it out, decide for yourself exactly what it means. And then some other things that you can look at after you look at the 2000 Mules documentary, right after it premiered, like maybe a week later, I started seeing articles. The first one was that Yuma County, which is in Arizona, down south by the border, they were one of the big hot spots where there were a bunch of the 2000 Mules that they were watching. And they were like maybe within a week of the premiere of the documentary, the sheriff of Yuma County said, we are opening an investigation into this voter fraud with the absentee ballots. And so I will link to an article, but you can totally look up and find other articles yourself, because it was really easy for me to kind of check through and see what was out there. But then the second thing that I noticed maybe a week ago was there was another announcement by Gateway Pundit, and basically their article says, police raid nonprofits in the 2000 Mules ballot trafficking investigation, then, quote, like Tweety birds, they sang. So that's interesting too. So again, check it out and see what you think. It looks like they've been able to use this data, which is so fascinating, because when Carl and I were watching it, we were like, oh my gosh, if I was watching a TV show, this information would be enough to open an investigation. And then they opened an investigation, and I thought, are they checking out these specific nonprofits? Like, okay. And lo and behold, they went directly to the nonprofits and we're getting information. So very, very, very fascinating. Okay. So again, if it's this easy to traffic absentee ballots, and then that also makes me wonder, like, again, it's just one portion of the vote and the security of our vote. Another thing that I think about are dead voters that are somehow still voting, right? They're always telling us we need to clean our voter rolls and make sure that it's only living people voting, and they're only voting once. Like I just heard recently about a local husband and wife that were sent 2 votes each. And they're like, well, if we don't vote, does somebody else use this vote? Very interesting questions. I don't know. I think these are things that we need to look at. So again, is our vote safe, right? And then I guess the next question I have is, how do you know, like, how many votes do you have to kind of make a difference, right? And who's paying for this? Because obviously someone's paying for it. So then I have to ask myself, does the group with the most money, are they basically picking the candidates and the policies? And that's a little alarming too, because then that goes back to the beginning. Is it even worth it for me to vote, right? Okay, so these are all good things to consider. Another thing that I thought about, do you remember when Mark Zuckerberg so graciously donated so much of his fortune to specific nonprofits and it had something to do with the drop boxes, right? So you can go back and kind of look that up and see what you can find. But I think it was very interesting that they mysteriously happened within counties of swing states. And I specifically remember them talking about Wisconsin, right? So maybe it wasn't quite as gracious as it appears, right? I don't know. I would love to hear what you think. And if you get a chance to watch and look up some of these articles, I would love to hear what you think about this. Again, who knew? Who knew that something so simple as an absentee ballot could have such an amazing network and organization of things happening? So lots of things to consider. Okay, so that's really it for our red pill today. And I am kind of curious, like if you've been having these like thoughts and you're concerned about your vote too, what other areas are you thinking about? I'm going to start getting together with some people here locally because after the 2000 Mules documentary came out, there's a couple ladies down in Utah County that made a map, and I can't remember exactly where the map came from. I think it's specifically from 2000 Mules with all their data, and they rated the counties red, yellow, and green. The green counties were those that from their data they collected, they didn't feel like those counties had, like, they were green, meaning go, like it seemed like their votes were secure. The yellow ones, there is suspicious stuff that they found. And the red ones, they found a lot of suspicious information, data within while they were doing this research. So our county happens to be yellow. So it's not green, which means we might need to go and look into some stuff and see what we need to do to make sure that our vote is secure. Again, I will link to the 2000 Mules stuff. I'll link to that map and you can look at your county and see what color your county is. I think, again, interesting things. But we are going to be, if you're local here in Wasatch County, reach out to me if you want to be a part of this and just look, because I think it is something that if we want to make sure that our vote is counting, we're taking the time to research the people and the policies, and then we go vote and it doesn't even matter. It seems kind of silly. So if we want to make a difference, I think this is something that we could do from a very local level. So we're going to be doing that. And I am curious if you think there's other parts of our vote that needs to be investigated, and just make sure that it's as pure as possible. I know nothing's going to be perfect, but I think it's our responsibility. If we're going to take the time to vote, we might as well make sure that it's worth our time and effort. And also, I don't want to just keep complaining about things that I'm seeing that I don't believe in. I want to make a difference. So these are the things that I'm thinking about today. I hope you're having a great week this end of May. I hope that that you'll find lots of joy in whatever it is that you have on your plate this week. I hope you know you're loved and appreciated, and sending so much love from the Candy Colored Studio.